We have 13 items on today's agenda. I'm joined by Council Member Labange, the Assistant President Pro Tem of this council. We have a quorum. Let us begin. Do we have any general public comment cards?
There are no general public comment cards.
Okay, then this is what I intend on doing, Mr. Labange. We have about 10 items that we can deal with as like a consent calendar.
Very well.
Okay, and those items would be items 1 through 5 and 8 through 12. We have no cards on those items, so without objection, those items will be deemed approved. Madam Clerk. Oh, now, item 8, I want to continue for 30 days. So, Mr. Labange, is it okay with you if we reconsider?
That's very good.
Okay, so consider item 8 reconsidered, and it will be continued for 30 days. Now we'll move to item 6. That was a request from we have a few requests from the public. If I could get, I hate when I start off with a name that I'm having difficulty pronouncing. Aisha, just come forward. And Daphne Pugh.
Aisha's with Miss Perry's office.
Oh, in Miss Perry's office. I should have looked up. I would have recognized the face. Go right ahead.
Aisha Wadala.
Councilmember? We're
Yes.
advised by the city attorney we should read the item before public comment begins.
Well,
So item 6 is the CLA report and resolution, Perry Labange, relative to establishing the city's position on the CASE Act.
Okay, go on.
Good morning, council members, Council President Wesson, and Council Member Labange. I'm going to read a letter written by Councilwoman Jan Perry.
Fine.
I urge the Rules, Elections, and Intergovernmental Relations Committee to support item 6, resolution relative to establishing the city's position to support the Californians Against Sexual Exploitation Act ballot case initiative called the CASE Act, which would strengthen penalties against human traffickers and protect sexually exploited children. In addition, I ask that you include an amendment to the resolution stating that the City of Los Angeles endorses Proposition 35. Human trafficking is a grievous violation of basic human and civil rights and is one of the fastest growing criminal enterprises in the world. What is most alarming is that it's taking place prevalently in our own city. In fact, Los Angeles has been identified as one of the 3 cities in California by the FBI as a high-intensity child trafficking area. A recent national study by Victims Group gave California an F grade for its weak laws dealing with child sex trafficking. The CASE Act is scheduled for the November 2012 statewide general election ballot. Its purpose is to strengthen penalties against human trafficking and improve Megan's Law against online predators. The CASE Act will deter traffickers with higher penalties and fines, use fines to fund victim services, remove barriers to prosecute child sex traffickers, mandate training for law enforcement officers, require convicted sex traffickers to register as sex offenders, require all sex offenders to disclose internet accounts, and protect victims in court proceedings. Current California laws offer little protection for victims targeted by human traffickers and online predators. It is crucial to decrease incentives and increase the risk for those involved in the enslavement and exploitation of human beings. There are many vulnerable women and young girls in our communities, and any of them could be a victim, held against their will and forced to sell their bodies. The victims are often girls as young as 12 who are sexually exploited for the financial gain of human traffickers. I urge you to support item 6.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Daphne Fung. I'm the Executive Director of California Against Slavery, and I am...
So let me apologize for mispronouncing your last name as well.
Okay. And I'm also a proponent of the CASE Act, which is also Proposition 35. About 3 years ago, I left my job at eBay to start my own company, thinking that if I'm ever going to work hard for anybody, I'm going to be working hard for myself. But that changed very quickly. About 2 months later, I saw a documentary called Sex Slaves in America, which left me profoundly angry, not because that human trafficking happens in this country, which I was aware of, but that our legal and judicial system, which is the last hope for victims of violent crime, wasn't there to protect victims of human trafficking. And that led me to start California Against Slavery, to change the law to protect the victims, but also to unify Californians to stop this heinous crime that's happening to our own children, young women in our own backyards. And about a year ago, I left my job at Cisco, actually, because to volunteer as a full-time with this proposition, because I really believe firmly that California is ready to stand up against this crime. And I'm here to proudly tell you that I was right. Our polling for this initiative, we're polling over 80% right now, which tells me very, very, very definitively that Californians are ready to do something about this, and they're asking all of their elected officials, all of their representatives, to also stand with them to take a firm stand against this crime. The average age of entry into the sex trade of American girls is 12 to 14 years old currently. They are supposed to be worrying about the algebra problems, not about how they're going to make the money that night so they won't be beaten or starved that evening. So thank you.
No, thank you. And, I think we need to compliment Ms. Perry for always being a champion on issues such as this, and I think that it's very appropriate that she would lead the council definitely in the right direction. So without objection, item 6 will be deemed approved. Thank you for
Can I just ask a
yes,
quick
Mr.
technical question?
Go right ahead, Mr. LeBron.
How much comes through the Los Angeles International Airport? How many people you think get through to the States, through the Los Angeles International Airport customs?
Because of the weak laws, because how weak the laws are in California, a lot of cases are not prosecuted under human trafficking laws, and that's one of the reasons why we need Proposition 35. Actually, the POPA, the representative from POPA, from the airport police will be here speaking at the council later on today.
Yeah, just a question I wanted to ask, though, is coming into Los Angeles, if there's a child with, it appears to be a family, but not a family, do people get coaxed to take it from their own country? It's an international network. I just wanted a little bit more information.
Oh, okay. So your question is asking, are airport police trained to identify?
No, my question is this. The sex trafficking of the young people, the young ladies, are they coming through the airplane? Are they coming through the border, or how?
So there are definitely international trafficking that are coming into Los Angeles,
Right.
That's for sure. But when the FBI identified Los Angeles as one of the hubs for sex trafficking, they're referring to domestic victims, girls who are born and raised here in the U.S.
How many international victims are there?
Well, the statistics for this crime is actually very loose right now
Got it.
because of the nature of the crime, and also because there's not enough resources currently being put into researching this crime.
Thank you for that information, and as you said, Mr. Wesson, we go forward with this. Thank you so much.
Okay. So without objection, item 6 is approved. Next, we have item 7, which is held special by cards. Gilbert Smith.
And item number 7 is a CLA report and resolution of Bonge Garcetti. These are relative to urging the issuance of a commemorative stamp in honor of Ricardo Montalban.
Mr. Smith, welcome.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Councilman. I'm appearing before you representing the Ricardo Montalban Foundation. Ricardo Montalban passed away in 2009, and we believe it is important for us to celebrate his life and his legacy with the United States Postal Service Forever Stamp. Mr. Montalban won attention for both leading character roles and provoked national dialogues about diversity in his lifetime. His work helped identify challenges of modern cultural minorities. In the later stages of his life, he established a foundation. We, his family, and his foundation staff have the privilege of
That happens to me on a regular basis, Mr.
I'm
Smith.
sorry. But
Take your time.
I'm trying to stay within the 2 minutes.
No, just take your time. Go ahead.
Honoring his convictions, we are pleased to take his work forward. His legacy lasted almost 7 decades as a professional. He came from Mexico, and he has a famous quote: "Mexico is my mother, the United States, the best friend I will ever have, and so I dream of the day when my mother will say, 'Ricardo, you have chosen a wonderful friend,' and the day when the friend will say, 'Ricardo, you have a sensational mother.'" He would be pleased today to see the headlines of the millions of people coming to the governmental offices to get deportation deferral programs. The work that we're doing, we're providing opportunities for young actors, directors, and writers, and carrying forward his belief that our lives need to be equal in opportunity and in the spirit of equality. Anyway, I want to thank you for sponsoring this resolution, and this is an important step for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
the villain, what was the name of the villain? Zorro's villain.
Zorro?
Yeah.
Zorro's villain, or are you talking about the Wrath of Khan?
No.
No, you're talking about Zorro.
Zorro. That's Zorro. What was it? The governor or the alcalde?
I'm pretty good on...
The alcalde. Anyway, that's one of my favorite Montalban roles, is when he played whoever the heavy was in one of the Zorro movies. He was a fine actor, handsome, charismatic, and just a fine actor.
Well, I think we're going to, the maker of the motion, we love Ricardo Montalban Theater on Vine Street, all the work that your foundation is doing, a great American, and I love his quote about his mom. There's no place better than our moms.
Great quote.
And there's no place better than the United States as a friend. So with your support, Mr. Wessett, we can move this forward. And also, I would suggest the Postal Service to enhance more of their special custom stamps to help them in this time of need, because there's nothing like a beautiful stamp of a great American.
Yeah, I agree. We've been joined by Council Member Jose Huizar, so we have a full complement of members. So where it relates to item 7, we will adopt the CLA report and resolution. Next item, Mr. Mr. Clerk or Madam Clerk, is item 13. If we could please read that item.
And item 13 is a report from the City Ethics Commission relative to recommendations for improving the city's campaign finance laws, including proposed amendments to the campaign finance ordinance and the provisions of the LA Ad Code regarding the matching funds program.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I have some cards. Anjali Kronheim, Robin Gilbert, Wayne Williams. Please come forward. Take your time.
Hi. I'm the LA organizer with California Common Cause, Anjali Kronheim. On behalf of my organization, we're pleased that LA is one step closer to implementing matching funds reforms. We support the Ethics Commission's proposed ordinance language to implement a matching fund system that would provide 4 public dollars for 1 private dollar raised, up to $250 per contributor. We think it makes sense to implement this in time to impact the 2013 elections. The Ethics Commission has also proposed limiting the matching funds to propose only money raised from LA City residents. We support this change, but would ask the committee to consider implementing these in 2013 at the same time as we raise the match rate. We think this is the right policy, and it'll also help save tax dollars. We found that more than 40% of money raised by the leading LA mayoral candidates comes from outside LA City. Using only LA City
Relax.
Using LA City public funds to only match LA City resident donations really empowers the voices of Angelenos. Of course, candidates can continue to fundraise outside the city, but those donations won't be matched with precious LA City dollars. By raising the bar on what money would be matched, only LA City residents, not out-of-city donations, we can save city money, a lot of it. It's especially important to protect the trust fund, and I know we're all concerned with the sustainability of that, with so many open seats and candidates running in 2013. We do support the 2015 implementation of the new qualification requirements, since the qualification window has already been open for the 2013 elections. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Dion, you got here early. You want to make sure you're not late for council.
That's right.
Like you are with some regularity. Okay.
Only occasionally.
Please.
Yes, hello, Robin Gilbert. I'm a volunteer with California Clean Money Campaign for almost 10 years now, and I coordinate the volunteers in the San Fernando Valley, a large group of people that work very hard on Measure H. And the voters approved that with a very high percentage, and we would like to continue with that process and implement the will of the voters on Measure H. We'd like you to keep the package that was recommended by the Ethics Commission, but we'd like you to amend it to keep a higher amount for the general election. This continues along with maintaining the will of the voters on Measure H, and it allows, for example, candidates like you to be able to answer to independent expenditures and negative ads. Whereas if the amount was lowered, it would be more difficult. And the council voted to do this on the special CD15, recent CD15 election, and it worked successfully. So we'd like you to accept that that amendment to maintain the higher amount and don't lower it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, Wayne Williams and then Trent. Trent, you write like me, so I can't make out the last name. So
Lang.
Okay, you go right ahead, Mr. Williams.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Wayne Williams. I'm a board member of the California Clean Money Campaign. And I first want to personally thank all three of you for enabling Measure H to get on the ballot. You must have had some kind of significant foresight because it came in with over 75% approval, and that's pretty significant. And Councilman Huizar, thank you very much for putting so much effort in it to making that such a valid write-up and working with us so closely. I want to not repeat what both Anjali and Robin both said, so I think it's most important to understand that because of the ruling in the Supreme Court that basically blocked the matching funds process of independent expenditures, the need to keep the matching funds amount high at the rate that was done in CD15 is really important across the board from mayoral on down, and not to cut it back. So amending this proposal to keep that level high would be most appropriate and fair, not only to candidates who are raising funds within the city, but also to you guys as well. So we'd also like to see you make this proposal go into effect immediately rather than not wait until 2015. So I would appreciate it very much if you could hit this one out of the park and wrap it up in that fashion after all the work you've done. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Trent, please.
Trent Lang, President of the California Clean Money Campaign. Thank you for having me, and especially want to echo their thanks for your help in putting Measure H on the ballot in the first place. Really showed the voters' desire to strengthen the public matching fund system. Councilmember Huizar, especially leadership in getting that on the ballot, and your help. This is a very good and strong proposal that the Ethics Commission has come up with. We're very pleased with it generally, increasing the matching funds to 4-to-1, making them happen only in city, so we're not giving big dollar matches to people from New York or Florida with LA taxpayer dollars. So we think these are all very good proposals. We would echo Common Cause's request to make the part, to amend it so that the matches only happen within the city starting immediately in 2013, not having that part wait until 2015. And the other, second part of the amendment, which is especially critical, as Robin Gilbert and Wayne Williams talked about, is the one difference with the current law is that the current law says that in general elections, council candidates get $125,000 in maximum matching funds. But when there are independent expenditures, that triggers extra matching funds to $150,000 and similar increases for mayoral and citywide candidates. And that's a very important defense for candidates like you and everybody else against independent expenditures. And that's why when you did the pilot for CD15, the council took our request back then to make it $150,000 because we have to get rid of the triggers. The Supreme Court said no more triggers for matching funds. So what the council agreed with and voted on in CD15 is, okay, let's make it at the higher amount, the $150,000 that they would get with triggers, because in a competitive general election, you're going to be getting independent expenditures anyway. So we'd ask you to do that across the board here for all races to the higher triggered amounts, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Clerk, these are all the cards that I have, so I don't believe there are any other public comment. So why don't we at this point in time see if we can get our ethics team to come forward and summarize their report. Guys, it's good to see you, and Heather, always a pleasure.
Good morning.
You going to make Tristan sit back?
Well, you know, we can bring him up if you'd like. There's an extra chair.
Because I
up,
like
David.
the three of you. I want to pick on somebody, so maybe it's,
Yeah, direct it that way.
maybe it'll be him. No, he does. He's a good guy and works hard.
Yes, he does.
He should sit at the grown-ups table.
He's earned the right.
Yes, he has. Go right ahead.
Well, good morning. Oh, my goodness. It's a pleasure for us to be here today. We are pleased. I am Heather Holt for the Ethics Commission. In addition to David Tristan, who's our Deputy Director, we also have Mike Altschul with us today. He is our Director of Policy. And as a staff and as a commission, we are pleased to present an extensive set of recommendations to improve the city's campaign finance laws. This has been many months in the making. It is the first comprehensive review that we have undertaken of these laws since they were first enacted over 20 years ago. And we considered a number of factors in making these recommendations. We came to these issues carefully and thoughtfully. We considered the purposes of the laws, including those that are stated explicitly in the Charter and the Campaign Finance Ordinance. We considered other legal issues such as constitutionality factors and how our laws interact with state law. We looked at our experiences and the data that we have collected in the years that we have been administering the program. We looked at how other jurisdictions handled their campaign finance laws. We considered input from the public and the regulated communities. And we also considered such practical issues as changes in technology since the laws were first adopted. So after months of very careful and detailed analysis, we were pleased that our commissioners on August 9th unanimously approved the recommendations that are before you. They, as you'll see in the transmittal, they are divided into 5 main categories, and I want to mention just briefly those categories and some of the key recommendations within each of them. The first category I want to mention is the Matching Funds Program, and that was really the main impetus for conducting this comprehensive review at this time. As has been mentioned by some of the public speakers, last year the United States Supreme Court did adopt or did issue its decision in Citizens United, which determined or declared some provisions, the trigger provisions of Arizona's matching funds program, to be unconstitutional. And because we have similar provisions in our laws, they are also unconstitutional and need to be repealed, and in fact were suspended during the CD15 special election. So the Commission is recommending the permanent repeal of those provisions, and in addition to make up for the loss of those trigger provisions, the Commission is also recommending an accelerated rate of match. It was briefly touched on, but just to provide a little more explanation of how the system works, currently a qualified candidate is entitled to more public money or faster public money when a triggering event occurs, and that is, a triggering event is essentially excessive spending by a candidate in the same race who is not participating in the matching funds program, or a certain level of spending by independent expenditure groups. Without the trigger events occurring, a participating and qualified candidate is entitled to receive one public dollar in exchange for every private dollar that has been received through fundraising efforts. To compensate for the loss of the triggers, the Ethics Commission recommends that qualified candidates be entitled to receive 4 public dollars in exchange for each private dollar that has been raised through fundraising. That will provide faster money to the candidates in waging their campaigns. The recommendation is that the 4-to-1 rate apply in both the general and the primary, which is slightly different from how it works now. Other recommendations regarding the matching funds program would improve the processes for candidates in terms of requesting and receiving payments in the matching funds program, and also, as was mentioned by some of the public speakers, a tightening, actually, of the qualification requirements in terms of requiring candidates to show support from city residents, the people who could actually vote them into office. So the Commission recommends that starting with the 2015 elections, both qualifying and matchable contributions come from individuals who reside within the city, and that City Council candidates be required to receive 200 $5 or more contributions from residents within their particular districts. And again, this is to, there are a number of reasons for this, but essentially it would safeguard the trust fund balance, which is limited, and it would also show that the candidates have support from the people who could vote them into office, and therefore it is a prudent expenditure of public funds to give them matching funds money. The next major one thing I should mention with regard to the matching funds program is there is some urgency with regard to those recommendations. Because we are already in the election cycle for the 2013 elections, the City Attorney's Office has advised that the matching funds provisions, especially the repeal of the trigger provisions, should be addressed in time for the new laws to become effective by November 5th. That's the first day of candidate filing week and the first day that candidates are asked to declare whether they will participate in the matching funds program or not. In addition, the processes for processing matching funds claims and making payments out to candidates are largely housed in the administrative code rather than the municipal code. And the city charter states that when the Ethics Commission makes recommendations to change the ad code, that the City Council is required to act on that within 60 days. That deadline is October 8th. So because we are recommending changes to the ad code and because we're in the middle of an election cycle, those recommendations in particular have some urgency to them. The next main category of recommendations has to do with fundraising and contributions, and some of the key recommendations there address text message contributions, which the Commission thinks should be allowed but should be regulated. Also, the aggregation of contributions, how to treat aggregation when one of the aggregated parties is completely prohibited from making a contribution, which wasn't the case when the aggregation laws first were enacted. Also, the process for implementing the CPI changes that are mandated by the Charter for limitations and thresholds in the city law. And also, there was another one, the fundraising windows. There's also a recommendation from the Ethics Commission regarding both the pre-election and the post-election fundraising windows. With regard to the pre-election fundraising window, the recommendation is to shorten the window by 6 months for all city candidates. With regard to the post-election fundraising window, the recommendation is to reinstate an extension, a one-time 3-month extension for candidates who encounter extraordinary circumstances that keep them from appropriately raising funds after an election to retire debt. The next main category of recommendations has to do with disclosure and disclaimer. Some of those include lowering the threshold for requiring electronic filing. Currently, the threshold is $25,000. When a committee raises or spends that amount of money, electronic filing is required. The Ethics Commission recommends lowering that amount to $10,000 to provide more robust public disclosure. There's also a recommendation that committees and candidates be required to designate and disclose social media accounts that they use in their campaigning, such as Twitter or Facebook. There's a recommendation that disclaimers on all political communications include the Ethics Commission's website, so that the public knows to look at the information, the vast amount of information actually that we make available online to the public regarding our city elections in general, but also regarding the particular person who is making that specific political message. And we also recommend expanding the application of the disclosure and disclaimer requirements for independent expenditure communications. Currently, when $1,000 or more is spent on an independent communication, that has to be disclosed and disclaimer requirements are triggered. The Commission recommends that there be an additional threshold that is non-monetary and based on distributing to 1,000 or more people. And the reason for that is to acknowledge the changes in communication and technology and the fact that many people can be reached for very little cost through electronic communications. And the Commission felt that if there are 1,000 distributions electronically without regard to cost, that constitutes a concerted effort to significantly affect the messages that are being distributed regarding a particular election or a candidate. The next two main categories for recommendations have to do with officeholder funds and with enforcement. For officeholder funds, the Commission recommends that legal defense funds be separated out from the officeholder funds so that there must be separate committees for officeholder accounts and for legal defense accounts. There are also some recommendations that address how and when officeholder funds can be spent. And finally, with regard to enforcement, enforcement of the campaign finance laws is largely governed by the city charter, which explicitly states the penalties that can be imposed and the processes. There's echoing of that in the campaign finance ordinance and a little bit of expansion, and the Ethics Commission recommends clarifying and tightening the laws actually to specify that a principal officer of a committee is liable for the conduct of the committee.
Why don't we just eliminate all penalties and fines?
Well,
that didn't go over well in the back.
Right.
Just wanted to make sure you were listening, Trent.
Yes, and then our last recommendation with regard to enforcement is to avoid unconstitutionally excessive fines by capping the late filing penalties at $500, which is how late filing penalties are handled through the municipal lobbying ordinance now. So that's a very brief overview of some of the key recommendations that have been made. There is, in the transmittal, attachment A is a quick guide to the substantive changes that are recommended. And attachments B and C are the proposed language for both the municipal code and the ad code that the Ethics Commission puts forward. In addition to the substantive recommendations that are identified in the quick guide, both attachments B and C also make technical changes to streamline language and to reorganize the concepts there in an effort to improve readability and comprehension and hopefully promote compliance for those who are regulated by it. So the Ethics Commission strongly urges the adoption of attachments B and C as ways to improve the city's campaign finance laws, and I would be happy to answer any specific questions that you have, and we do really appreciate your very quick consideration of these important issues and the timeliness associated with them.
Well, first of all, let me thank you and staff, city attorney, Mike, all you guys. You've done you have a very challenging job, and I think you've done it well. I also want to compliment the commission for their fine work on these issues. But I do have a couple of questions,
Sure.
and we had, I don't know, at least 3 speakers today, maybe 4. There was a debate about starting a process in 2015 and starting it in 2013. So how did you come up with the recommendation for 2015?
There are 2 factors that heavily weighed on that recommendation. One is the fact that we are in the middle of an election cycle right now. The 2013 fundraising windows are open, and under city law, candidates who participate in the matching funds program can have contributions matched as long as they are received within 12 months before an election. The 12 months prior to the primary for 2013 started in early March, and so there are we already have 73 candidates who have registered for the 2013 elections, and we're not even at candidate filing week yet, but probably a significant number of those candidates are already counting contributions that they have received possibly since early March in terms of determining whether they want to participate, whether they think they can qualify for the program. The other factor is a more logistical factor, which is that these requirements will require extra work on the part of the Ethics Commission staff in order to determine whether someone has qualified to receive matching funds in a timely way, and also to make payments in a timely way. We will have to implement a system for doing that in a very speedy fashion, and we will have to acquire software that helps us precisely target whether a contribution came from a resident within the city and for council candidates within a particular district.
Okay, I only have a couple of questions, and then Mr. Labange is ready to jump out of his chair, but I do have a couple of questions. One of which, maybe you can jump in with me on this. I like the concept of having a requirement where it relates to getting contributions from individuals within the city that you're going to represent. However, there are, for many years, I'll just use a personal example. I lived in Culver City, a half a block away from Los Angeles. I was very involved in Los Angeles politics and government, more so than the city of Culver City. Did you, and this is based on Mr. Labange asking me a question about this, was there a discussion about maybe including the county of Los Angeles instead of the city? And if there was, how did you come to the See, I don't know who that was. I think it was Mr. Smith. See, I do that too. I think it was, just how did you sort through that?
Yes, we did consider that. We had some commissioners who were concerned about the fact that there are a lot of folks who are affected by city policy, even though they don't live specifically within the city boundaries. Ultimately, the conclusion was those individuals can still contribute to city campaigns. They just wouldn't be matched. So it doesn't keep someone who lives a half a block from the city line from giving to a particular candidate to support that person. That the candidate just would not be able to receive public money in exchange for that particular contribution. And the reason that the city lines and the district lines were chosen is because the commissioners felt that that was an appropriate reflection on the level of support that the candidates have, and that was an important way to not only, well, essentially to safeguard public money, that the fund does not have an unending balance, and we are having more and more special elections, and there are things that if the match, particularly at a 4-to-1 rate, were to apply throughout the county, that would be a much heavier draw on the trust fund balance. And it also is a way to show a level of support from the people who can actually elect this person to office, and the commissioners felt that that was important.
So you believe this protects the trust fund?
It does, yes.
Mr. Labange, you want to jump in on this?
I love the city. I love people who live in the city. But the other time, we're an international city. And I love city employees who live in the city. How many at that table live in the city? Okay? So here's the question. Do any of you live in the city? Okay, yes, you're right. I would love everybody to live in the city. Anybody
Let's
live
take
in the
them
city
out
over there? Okay, so that being said, why I would go by the county is the city does influence. I would just suggest, Mr. Chair, that we broaden it from the city to the county. There's several unincorporated areas of the county that are adjacent to the city, and there's several institutions in the city, whether it's our parks, our museums, which are run by the county, that people get engaged with. I think of many coaches who may live in Culver City who were involved with the Baldwin Hills Sports Complex at Jackie Robinson Stadium and all these other things that are close. In my neck of the woods, there's Glendale and Burbank right next to it. This is a map of Los Angeles, which originally was bounded by Hoover Street, by Fountain, by Indiana, and Exposition by USC. 28 square miles originally. Now it's 472. You see the shoestring annexation to the Port of Los Angeles, which shoestring annexation is now illegal in the state from many, many years ago. But I'm sure the candidate in the 15th, and they intertwine with the port, with Long Beach, or with Lomita or unincorporated county. I just think it would be fair to say unincorporated county. I can understand money from New York or Nevada or other places that would, you say, that's a good idea. But the county, and we're integrated, and there's parts of the county we're surrounding some cities, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Calabasas, adjacent, San Fernando. There's 19 cities, I believe, that touch our borders. So I would like this, when we go to council, to have a discussion on whether we be city, county, and you could say that, and I think that'd be real important. Okay. And also, who was the first candidate in the history of the city of Los Angeles to have matching funds?
I believe that was Councilmember Tom Labange.
Right. I didn't win the election, but I got the funds.
Maybe. No, I'm not going to go there. I got a long day today, so I shouldn't start down that road. And I did not know that.
Yeah, 1990.
That was.
And I also think on the history, though, Mr. Wessett, we should all know, it was, I think, I don't think it was totally, if I remember correctly, a member of the city administration sat on a bank board, and they made a decision on a zoning case. And I don't think it was a conscious decision, like they did it and they knew what they were doing, but that's what started the ball rolling for ethics reform, and then it brought it all together, and they tied it in with elections, etc. So how many people have been fined in the history of the Ethics Commission?
Oh, my goodness. That's an excellent question. I don't know. Do we have a ballpark on that? Anybody?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to know. Most people are ethical. And the last thing I do want to say, because you have this campaign cycle coming up, I always felt if anyone does matching funds, the first piece of mail they get should be from the City Ethics Commission as a voter. It said, and the neighborhood councils may develop the 12 hot items, and candidate A supports this or doesn't support this, because people, it's unethical to lie, right?
Yes.
But it's legal to lie in a campaign piece, right?
It is.
Okay,
Free speech.
so I'd like to see the Ethics Commission send the first piece out as a base of what are the basic issues, and that would lower your costs, because then people wouldn't be fighting the dirt that you see. But anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Labange. Mr. Weezer, are you good, or did you want to get engaged?
On that one issue.
Well, wait, one thing. So when is this due to come back to council?
I think Tuesday.
Okay.
Wednesday. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm being told Wednesday.
So come back with refine the answer a little more where it relates to the LA City solely or LA County. With that, Mr. Weezer.
Yeah, on that issue, I wanted to just clarify, Mr. Labange, were you then suggesting that only for the citywide candidates or districts as well?
Everybody, because I think a council member let's say I have the San Fernando Road corridor, did before redistricting, and it bellied up to Glendale. And some people see the hard work that you do, and they think, I want to support that guy. So what's the difference? And they may live in Los Angeles but work in Glendale, or vice versa.
So then a qualifying contribution must come from individuals residing within the county, and council
County of Los
candidates
Angeles.
must receive at least 200 contributions of $5 or more from the county?
No, 200, I'm okay with 200 on the local district. I think that's a novel concept. That shows local grassroots. For general support, I think I would just say there should be a countywide.
If we were to do that, we might want to specify that the city-wide candidates should collect 200 contributions of $5 or more from city residents. That's essentially their district. Because the recommendation is to limit all contributions that are matched to within the city, there wasn't a need to specify a requirement for city-wide candidates. But if we move to the county, anyone in the county
Why
can...
don't you go 25 instead of $5? I mean, just
We
saying.
could.
I mean,
We could.
if you really, people, you'll get that. You know.
Mr. Labange, some low-income areas, the difference between $5 and $25 is
An awful lot.
it's a lot. So people want to participate and show they support someone. It's a difference, 25 between five.
How many $5 contributions do you have listed? I'm just saying, I understand that, Mr. Weezar, but I would just think if you're trying to do what you said you're trying to do, I'm stopping.
Yeah, because you see, Mr. Labange was on a roll. Okay, to the city attorney, you've reviewed this, and what's your comfort level?
With
The recommendation.
With the recommendations, we have two issues with the recommendations, which we advised the commission about at its meeting prior to adoption. We have significant concerns. It's not so much the proposal, but it will relate to a provision that's adopted. They both relate to disclosure provisions relating to independent expenditures. We have significant concerns with the fact that our 24-hour reporting of independent expenditures doesn't have a beginning date. It essentially applies during the entire election cycle, the fundraising cycle, which is 18 to 24 months. Under case precedent, we need the courts have upheld 24-hour reporting only when it's close in time to an election. And so 24-hour reporting under virtually all campaign finance disclosure schemes now is limited to 60 to 90 days before an election. So we believe that that we need to change that so we have a beginning time, so that our 24-hour reporting cycle starts at the beginning of candidate filing week. But if there should be any independent expenditures before candidate filing week, which generally don't happen, it's actually reported on a much slower basis, actually like a 5-day reporting requirement.
Don't we have a amendment that we'll be recommending later that should
Yes.
elevate your comfort level?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, where it relates to that issue. Was there another one?
Yes. The Ethics Commission is recommending an expansion of the independent expenditure disclosure requirements to people who don't qualify as committees, and to committees when they do a certain level of communications, including electronic communications, without regard to cost. We have some concerns that because there's no monetary threshold associated with those particular disclosure requirements, that the courts that would review this would not uphold it. The current Ninth Circuit precedent has previously struck down other disclosure requirements where there hasn't been a monetary threshold. So we have serious concerns that if without any monetary threshold, that would be subject to a lot of challenge.
Okay, and
we recommend that there be a monetary
It's my understanding that adjustments have been made where it relates to that
Yes.
subject as well. Last question. The window where it relates to collecting money to pay off your debt. it's hard to raise. And I don't think you want to put candidates in a position where they can't pay vendors.
That's absolutely right. We don't want that to be the situation. When the post-election, I'm sorry, I keep doing that.
No, it's not you. It's when we're here early and there's not a lot of folk. It just seems louder than normal.
Okay, thank you. When the post-election fundraising window was originally adopted, it was a 3-month period of time, and an unlimited number of extensions could be requested and granted. That became unwieldy. It became clear that 3 months wasn't enough time. The law was subsequently amended to say everybody gets 9 months. You don't have to ask for an extension to get to 9 months. The ability to request and receive an extension, however, was then eliminated. Part of the reason why it's important to have a fixed date where fundraising after an election stops is because we can't conduct post-election audits, which are required by the charter, until all activity by that committee has ceased. So by definition now, we can't start to audit committees until at least 9 months after the election. If there's an extension that would, a 3-month extension would make that 12 months. And we are sensitive to the realities of that it could pose difficulties for candidates who are running for re-election at the same time that audit results are being released. So there is a sensitive line to walk there. 9 months has seemed to work since that was instituted, and we didn't make a recommendation to change that particular period of time, but we did feel like it was appropriate to allow extraordinary extensions because, you know, life happens.
Okay, I understand that. I'm not 100% there, but I get where you're coming from where it relates to that. But again, I want to say that this is impressive work, a job well done.
Thank you very much. The staff worked very hard, and the commissioners devoted significant time and thought to this. So everyone is to be congratulated. Thank you.
Mr. Weezer.
Thank you, and I too want to thank everyone. This takes a lot of effort and time to think about this. My one question is this. In your review, and all of you, anybody up there, you know, we have a number of rules that all candidates and elected officials have to abide by. And there's goals and purposes for that, to have that. I mean, we, you know, want to make sure things are fair, want to make sure for a number of reasons. But in proposing all these new rules or changes, have any of you thought of, well, are we just creating more rules and changes that just make people kind of, okay, well, let me see how I could mark that box off, but it really doesn't make a difference in changing behavior? I mean, was that something that the commission or the staff kind of thought through? Or, you know, as a candidate, I'd be honest with you, some things we do as candidates, we just, oh, there's a rule? Okay, well, let's see how we could, you know, comply with the rule, but it doesn't really change anything. And we sometimes feel that we have just these rules that don't really do anything, but they just make us check off a box.
Yes, we actually did consider that. With all of the recommendations that we have, we didn't want to wind up with laws that just require people to jump through hoops for for reasonable purpose. Mm-hmm. And in fact, some of the recommendations are to repeal some provisions of law that were just there, that may have seemed like a good idea at the time, but provide no benefit to the public and in fact can be just busy work on the part of a candidate or a committee. So we were conscious of that in making our recommendations. We certainly don't want it to be a system that is full of requirements that don't serve a purpose. Okay. And we did talk extensively about the purposes of each of the provisions of the law as we went through them, trying to be mindful of that.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weezer. Okay, now, again, thank you for your work. We're going to have Charles, I believe, read, one second, Charles, we're going to read amendments that we will add to your recommendations, but I'm going to do something that I rarely do and afford Daniel Tan the opportunity to come forward right now. And this is only because it's Friday. Because once we start general public comment, when it's over, it's over. But hurry up, sir.
Thank
Welcome.
you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make note that it is extremely important that candidates such as yourselves have a defense against independent expenditures, which, as reality is today, they can be fairly extensive, extremely extensive. And we also want to note that it's important to restrict public campaign dollars to match only donations from LA residents, and that we ask that we make this happen right away rather than wait until 2015. I yield the rest of my time to Trent Lang.
No, Trent, you don't get a twofer. You don't get a twofer, Trent.
It's unethical. It's unethical.
You don't get a twofer. Go on, Trent.
Thank you.
Gee, I gotta watch you guys.
We're tricky. That's clean money people. Wanted to clarify the First Amendment and limiting to moving up the limits to city or possibly county in 2013. That was the only part we were asking about, not in terms of qualifying, just in terms of the matching of the 4-to-1 part. So the qualifying, we agree with ethics, don't do that now, but we wanted to say the qualifying, the matching, the 4-to-1 should only be within the city. And we also really urge you to follow the CD15 precedent and make the matching funds in the general election be the same as they are in current law when there are triggered independent expenditures, because these days all races are going to have a lot of independent expenditures. So make sure they have the same defense as under current law. Don't lower them as, unfortunately, the current proposal does.
Thank you. Now, I think that for the folks in the audience, that you're going to get a heck of a lot of what you want. And I also want to thank you for recognizing that it is truly the 800-pound gorilla is the independent expenditures. And that's it's just good to hear that you guys understand that and understand the position they could put us in. So with that said, Charles, if you could read the recommendations.
Certainly. The recommendations of the committee would be to approve the recommendations of the City Ethics Report subject to the following amendments. Amend the Ethics Report to maintain the current pre-election fundraising windows of 24 months for citywide candidates and 18 months for council candidates, to increase the post-election fundraising window from 9 months to 12 months, to prohibit mass solicitations that knowingly solicit from city employees or where city employees comprise more than 5% of the people solicited, to revise the matching funds program to provide a 2-to-1 match in primary elections and a 4-to-1 match in general elections, apply a 24-hour reporting requirement on the disclosure of independent expenditure communications between the opening of candidate filing and the occurrence of the election, and a 5-day reporting requirement at all other times, to have charter mandated adjustments that are made by the Ethics Commission staff made no later than March 1st of each year and to be deemed in effect for the upcoming fundraising window but not in any contemporary fundraising window, to delete the certification language related to contributor information and include language that campaign committees will have such information on all fundraising and contribution forms, to set the threshold for disclosure of independent expenditures at $100, to request the Ethics Commission to report back to this commission or to this committee with an implementation and verification plan for qualification and contributions, to request the Ethics Commission to report back to Council with any necessary changes to the city's administrative code no later than September 6, 2012, and to authorize the city attorney to make any necessary technical or legal changes to these amendments and the recommendations. Additionally, as requested by yourself and Mr. Labange, the City Ethics Commission was directed to report back to Council on Wednesday with a broadened discussion of possibly including the County of Los Angeles and not just the City of Los Angeles with respect to the matching funds program.
Thank you. Okay, so without objection, we will approve the Ethics Commission's report as amended and see you Wednesday.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, is there any more business before this august body?
That completes today's business.
Yes, Mr.
On the other items be counted as a yes?
Yes, if we could include Mr. Weezer on the item. We're adjourned.